Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Howdy ho, everybody.
Good morning.
With
Good
that
morning.
with that cute pixie haircut she's
Yeah,
got.
yeah.
Good little college girl.
Yeah, I wish.
Sassy,
I wish I
sassy.
could go back to those days.
It's a state of mind.
Yes.
Dave Townsend, you survived, huh?
Yes, sure did. How about you? Did you have a good time?
I did. I'm here ready to rock and roll.
Excellent. It's a new day.
Yeah.
Sure was a great time last night. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, like 200 people from our St. Louis family out celebrating their success in 2025, right?
Yes, we had a fantastic celebration. Great job, Sandy, and the whole team. It was awesome.
Yeah. So we got 1 minute before we get rocking and rolling. What what do you do to be prepared? And I just want to kind of have a little bit more interactive session today and ask, when you're prepared, do you get a better outcome than when you're not prepared? And I don't just mean going to meet with a client. I mean just for your business in general, right? Does anybody have a routine? Does that preparedness include things like gratitude and um, affirmations? Like how do you get prepared, Mr. Durso?
So I have this kind of strange routine that I do. I'm a former sweat hog. So back in the day, we had a training company called Floyd Wickman Sweat Hogs, and he was big on tracks. And when you get ready to go into a listing appointment, you'd stop before you hit the front door, you'd smile, and put the whole uniform on, which was, you smile, look for something to talk about right away. Uh, and you'd get him at the front door, you'd smile, pay him a compliment, and take him to the kitchen table. Um, and that was I still do it. I mean, I smile, I put my hand out, I try to pay him a compliment. Wow, what a great lawn, or what amazing curb appeal, or to find something to get the ball rolling, and just do it on a positive way. And it's just something that I've done for 40 years, and it works.
So is anyone else, by show of hands, done the sweat hogs? Let's see, do we have a couple? Oh yeah, Fran Durso, Bobby Golden, Marilyn did it.
Now you're
Judy,
making us show our age, Rob.
Judy, you were
Yeah.
a sweat hog?
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify. I was thinking you may not believe me on that, but it became, was it Floyd Wickman? I have the MSA designation or whatever. It morphed from Sweat Hogs to the next generation. I did that back in
Yep.
2005.
Yep.
And wait, Lynn Schmitz, where are you? I thought you were supposed to be in St. Louis.
I'm in St. Louis. I'm 5 minutes from the office. I wanted to jump on here, not miss it, and
Okay,
then I'm heading over.
no worries. Okay, that's commitment coming from Florida to St. Louis for our Paris challenge.
Yes.
Um, and then ironically, you know, I was talking to a couple of our top performers in Southeast Florida, and they were telling me how the Landmark Forum changed their basically changed their life and their business. Now, is anybody know the Landmark Forum? Raise your hand because what? Yeah, okay, see, look at out even in St. Louis, the Landmark Forum. So I was talking about that, and Sandy mentioned that she was would you call it a graduate, Sandy, when you go to that?
Yeah. Hmm.
And what exactly is that? Just out of curiosity, because those are very, very high performers that give a lot of credibility to the Landmark Forum for changing their business.
The Landmark Forum is really to see the possibility in your life and where you've built walls that you're trying to say pushed down and more or less just says, oh my gosh, I built a wall here. Why don't I just walk around it? And it just gives you opportunity.
And
Really
is that
gives you
like
opportunity.
is that a seminar? Is that a coaching program? What
It's a
exactly is it?
it's a worldwide training program. There's offices around the country and they do it around the world. The Landmark Forum is the first class. It's 3 days, um, eight in the morning till 8 at night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday evening. And it's going to impact your ability to communicate, your relationships, just how you view the world. And it's little things, but what's sort of like riding a bike, once you see that thing, then you can't unsee it. So, I mean, I'll just tell you a story from 30 years. I first did the Landmark Forum in 1991, but um, I was really, woman's lib back then, just fighting my way to, the through the world. And I remember riding a bike with my husband, and every time we passed a car, he'd say, "Watch out for that car. Watch out for that car." And just when I was about to say, "Oh my God, I could see the car," I thought, oh no, this man loves me so much that he would not let one car go by without mentioning it. And so that's like an example. It's so small, but that's how you could see every issue in your life. There's a reason, there's a purpose, and you can understand it from their perspective and what they need and what they're doing. So it really did help me. It's helped my marriage. It's helped my business. I think I can understand where people are coming from more because I'm not the typical person. So, and a lot
Okay.
of our team have taken it, a lot of our agents. Our whole company started 30 years ago with 3 people who had taken the Landmark Forum and met through the Landmark Forum. So there's several agents here and it's part of our culture.
Very, very good. And sweat hogs. Anybody want to tell me, like, are you still uh, embracing things that you learned from that early part of your career? And how is that affecting you 30 plus years later?
For me, it's habits. It's habits you change before you can change. I mean, uh, it became a way of life for me. I mean, I remember when I was young and the instructor at the time would say, don't just use this stuff when you're working with buyers and sellers. Use it in your family, use it in your day to day. And the whole premise was why we talk too much sometimes. Why sell with blah 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 when you can sell with just blah. Um, my favorite thing out of it was these moneymaker words that they had. They're little phrases: "I would," "should I," "fair enough," where we would tend to oversell something, or if somebody said, well, you think I should do this and this to the house, if it made sense, instead of getting into a whole puddle of stuff, you would just say, I would. And it just encapsulates everything. And I used it with my kids. Dad, you think I should do that? I would. It gets into your DNA. And I'm embarrassed to tell you how often I've used it, but it works.
So here's one of the things, like an aha moment that I'm getting from trying to, present material and lead such a great group is you go to these, trainings or forums, and you leave and you think you're leaving with material, but what you really should be leaving with is a mindset. And for those of you who are younger in the business, and haven't been in it for a long time, things like your expectation, your mindset, having gratitude, believe it or not, really influences the way that you behave and the outcome that you get. Okay, so there's all these processes that you have, right? Then there's your mindset, right? And if you have that mindset that you can win and you can overcome, okay, I think part of it is the confidence you get from going to a Floyd Wickman or to a Landmark Forum or wherever you get your um, uh, use is your business and end life, your business and life philosophy on how to handle things. Because people aren't lucky and unlucky in this business. If you've been in the business for 3 years, okay, I hate to break it to you, you're not unlucky, and whatever you got is what you deserve. All right, as hard as that is, because everybody has, randomness that happens, and lousy agents on the other side, and there's always somebody that might, lose a job or get sick and they can't close. But whatever you get over time is what you deserve. And I know that's hard to hear, especially if you're not where you want to be. And part of that is because you haven't put yourself in a place where you can accept, the success and the results that you want and you deserve to get. Okay. And I don't know if does that resonate with anybody? Because it's like it's not a bunch of scripts, right? It's a mindset. It's a belief. And it's not just an affirmation where you brainwash yourself. It's like the core of who you are. Somebody, I know from earlier on in my career, Karma, who's on these a lot of the time, has that mindset in terms of I'm going to get it done. It doesn't, and maybe you're like me, Karma. Sometimes you don't even know how you're going to get it done, but you have that confidence that it's going to be completed and you're going to do right by your client, and then that produces a residual yield, if that makes any sense.
You are absolutely right.
I mean, so the details don't matter, right? You're like, okay, I just got to roll my sleeves up and we're going to figure out how to get through this. And I think a lot of us on this, in this business are looking for, hey, Mr. Dursa, what's the magic words I use to get out of this problem? And there's no magic words, right? It's a mindset. It's kind of like who you are. It's how you deal with, your business, and probably how you deal with your business is very similar to how you deal with your life, right? So readiness is not necessarily, it's not, being a constant marketer and an annoying person going everywhere, hey, I need business, but it's when the business is there that you're always prepared, right? That there's nothing that kind of trips you up and says, boy, I wish I would have been prepared for that, because, I guess the phrase I want to use as a parallel to this is the worst time to think about what you're going to say is when, right before you say it, right? So if you're thinking about what you're going to say, you probably have already lost, right?
Yep.
Because you're not delivering it, you're thinking about it. And sometimes if you're not prepared, right, your client might be talking and you're not listening because you're thinking about what you're going to say because you don't know how you're going to respond in every circumstance. Pretty deep, right? If Rob Durso, if you're talking to me, right, and I'm thinking about how I'm going to answer the first half of your question, I'm not paying attention to the second half. We're already going to be out of rhythm in our communication, and I probably already lost that. Okay, so readiness, begins with clarity of purpose. It's knowing exactly who you are, why you are, who you are as a professional, what you stand for, and what you're looking to build or accomplish. It eliminates hesitation. It creates direction. The clients feel that immediately, right? Because if you have to think about how you're going to solve a problem, like if I went to a doctor and I'm like, I need to have a heart surgery, and they're like, oh, let me think about it. Like I would be like looking for another doctor, wouldn't you? In that extreme. Now, in our business, we don't just sell houses, right? We change lives, right? We help people. And I was talking to some of our team out here in St. Louis, and my challenge was if there were 3 exact buyers and went to 3 different agents with the exact same criteria. I know that's not possible, but you got to humor me and say these are 3 exact these are the exact same person with the exact same needs. They go to 3 agents. Do they wind up with the same house? What do you think? Or does the agent influence that process, right? See, I thought early on, if I wanted to buy a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath in a neighborhood of Brentwood out here in St. Louis, I'd probably wind up at the same house. It didn't matter what agent I used from a consumer perspective. If that makes sense to you, like if you're on camera, like raise your hand, right? Because as a consumer, you think I want to have a 4-bedroom, 2.5 bath. If I go to any one of these 64 agents on this call, I'm going to wind up with the same house if it's meant to be. But I got to tell you, I believe it's so far from the truth of what that is. And what that goes to is mindset and readiness, right? And it's not just knowing, what you're going to say, but it's the way that you deliver. It's the way you make people feel is probably more important than what you know, right? Anybody taking those deep words? Dan Gagnon, think about this. You're analytical like me, buddy. The way you make people feel is more than what you know and what you deliver. I hate to say it, right? Because you can have all the answers, but if they don't feel it, okay, it doesn't mean anything, right? Our performance is not judged by us; it's judged by our client. Like, what do they think of what we said? What do they think of how we performed, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, agents with clarity make faster decisions, communicate more effectively, and operate with intention instead of reaction. Right? When there's a problem, if you're, what am I going to do with this? I never saw this before. You might be able to solve it, but you might have already lost it. So, being ready is more than, just preparing for a buyer meeting or a seller appointment or a random encounter. It's always knowing who you are and what you're going to deliver.
Rob, if I could just mention one thing. 20 years ago, when I got started in real estate, I was encouraged by my manager there to come up with an affirmation. And I really, struggled with that. And then finally one day I said, you know what? I always want to be a better agent than any agent I'm dealing with. And that has been the driving force for me that has made me always get updated, get new knowledge, and always try to answer every question that I can think of someone asking me before they ask it to me, so I'm ready. And it served me very well.
And Robert, when you mentioned that, it reminds me of like there's 2 businesses that we could be in. One of them where we have the confidence and the congruity in how we do things, and another one where we're concerned about whether we're going to say the right thing to secure a listing or get a buyer to make the right offer. And with what you said, if something doesn't happen, then it just wasn't meant to be. It wasn't that you're going to second guess how you engaged or what you did in the process when you hit that level. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I think that's really powerful because, in this business of ups and downs, go back to your manager days, Robert, you would see newer agents when a deal falls apart, it's like their life is ending, right? Or they're going to get a new career. But, for you, if you're doing 24 transactions a year, you might know that, 2 are going to die for reasons beyond your control, right? It might be a problem with the house appraisal, the buyer, but that doesn't matter. If the 2 fall apart on January 2nd and 4th, the people that are seasoned in the business, that have a true north, that have a purpose, that have a readiness, they just know, okay, so I took my 2 punches in January, the rest of the year is likely to be better. And there's no like logical foundation for that, but that's just the way it works. And readiness is confidence, not arrogance. Okay, it truly is putting the customer ahead of us, and then we always wind up winning anyway. And I know that sounds crazy, but if you just take care of the client and you say, hey, what am I going to do for them? And I'm prepared for anything that could happen in our business, then you're going to wind up with a much better outcome as opposed to, worrying about, I need this payment to fund my investment property or to pay my mortgage. Okay, because that's making it all about you, not about them. Second state of readiness is knowledge creates confidence. Okay. A lot of us have, micro areas that we know, the neighborhoods that we know like the back of our hand, and other people on this call, they do the appropriate amount of homework before you engage in the transaction. That's why if you're not well prepared, even if they don't ask you a question, you still don't come across the same way as if you're fully prepared for whatever you do. And this might be, going outside the neighborhood that you're familiar with, which just requires a little bit of extra effort to become fully immersed in that, or going into doing a part of the business that you might not know. Maybe you're doing a rental, like, Rob Durso does rental, commercial property and residential, right? But it's two different businesses, right? And if you're a residential agent, Rob Durso, if you're a residential agent and you're like an 11, like you're that talented, when you go into the commercial space, if you don't take the time to learn it, it can be very, very frustrating and unlucrative. Correct?
Absolutely.
And I wish,
They can smell you. If you don't know your way around, they know it.
I mean, I always hear people, oh, I want to do some more commercial, just like it's like I want to go watch I want to go watch the Yankee game. No, this is like a career. Like you don't just, hey, I want to do more commercial. It's not like I wake up, I'm going to do some. It's quite insulting to the commercial professionals, and that's what's part of preparedness, right? And you're not going to be, an all-star. It was like Michael Jordan was the best basketball player ever, but I think he went into baseball, right? Anybody remember that? I don't think he wasn't so good, was he? So that's the same thing. You could be a great residential agent or commercial agent, and you want to go and flip without doing the homework. You're not ready. You're not serving your client, and unfortunately, you probably won't get a good return from that. The second principle: knowledge creates confidence. Confidence creates clarity. Market knowledge makes you the calmest person in the room. Market knowledge makes you the calmest person in the room. We need to understand the process, not just the inventory, right? The inventory is, hey, this is a beautiful house, this is what it's worth, but you need to understand and explain the process. Otherwise, you're not going to get to the finish line, or you're not going to get the repeat business that you deserve. Knowing scripts, conversations, and value propositions cold goes back to, if you have to think about it, you've already lost. Being able to explain the market in simple, powerful language. Now, in 38 minutes, I'm going to be doing another roundtable for the Keys at 33 first-time buyers. And, Sandy threw this tremendous event here, and I was talking to some powerful agents. And, I saw a light go off when I was talking about buyers. Because I go back 3 or 4 years, are there people that we met or we might have even showed a house to that ultimately never wound up buying? If that's true, raise your hand. Right? From 2021, 2022, what happened to those people now? Anybody? Some of them didn't buy. As a matter of fact, a lot of them didn't buy. It was not even possible for them to buy, but where are they now?
Most of them probably bought.
I think a lot of them haven't. The math wasn't there, Sandy. There wasn't that many sales, right? So what I mentioned, which was just because of my, preparing to do these roundtables, is, and everybody should write this one down. If you're waiting for interest rates to drop, and I think this is a NAR stat from our economist there. He said every time the interest rate drops 0.5%, there's 1 million more buyers in the market. 1 million more buyers in the market. Now, most of our areas, there's probably more buyers than there is inventory. And if the rates drop 1%, that's going to mean 2 million more buyers on a 4 million sales last year. That doesn't look good as a buyer, does it? Okay, but that's being ready, and that's giving the customers what they need to be able to make the right decisions. All right. And anyway, and that's explaining the market in simple, powerful language. Right. Does anybody ever go on an appointment with a buyer or a seller and you do all this prep and they don't ask you any questions? I know you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel when that happens? Bill Sheehy, are you able to talk? Like, you prepare for this, you prepare to go on a listing.
Yes.
And you have all the information to back it up, and they don't really ask you many questions. Do you still go into the information? Do you feel like you over prepared and you wasted an hour of time? Like, how do you feel when that occurs?
I feel a little frustrated. I put all the time in. I feel as though they're not really connected to the presentation, that I might have missed something. So I'm always thinking to myself, what did I miss? Why aren't they engaging with me? And then I go back into my scripts.
No, Bill, I'm going to flip that for you here. And I'm going to tell you that perhaps the fact that you had all that knowledge just meant that you spoke at an elevated level of confidence where they didn't feel the need to ask those questions. Because I felt that same way. I felt that same way earlier on. And sometimes I would crack open the work that an agent and I did for an hour and a half, and we put in a nice little book and I would share it with them, right? And then I'd wind up unselling the process. And what I didn't realize was the fact that I took the time to prepare, I was uber ready for that meeting. And the client didn't even need to ask me those questions, right? Because of the way that I carried myself. So hopefully, if you leave this mastermind here today, Bill, just leave it with a different perspective on what happens when they don't ask you and when you don't have to crack open the work that you did. Because the fact that you knew it put out the confidence. If they asked you a question, you can go to page 7 and show them, and that's it. You don't go page 1 to 11. You just show them, hey, here's page 7, what happened. Or you know it in your head what's on page 7, right?
Yes.
So
And you know what else, Rob, is all that knowledge that you spent that extra hour and a half on, somewhere down the line, you're going to be called upon to answer questions about that. And you'll have it in your knowledge bank at that point in time.
yeah. So that's all part of being prepared. And it's also part of, and let's say two people see an event, right? Maybe it was a car accident, right? I think two people would have different renditions of what happened, and they both saw it 2 seconds ago. Is that not possible? Right? It's a matter of the perspective. And I don't think that, and it could be completely innocent. Like, one person can be like, oh, that person pulled out in front, or that person didn't stop. And they all have their own story based upon the lens that they looked at it. So, when agents know their craft.
Or Rob, after you've delivered your presentation and they have no questions, I think the next thing they would ask is, where do we sign?
Yeah. So, and Rebecca, I'm going to ask you to maybe reframe the way we do that. And I would say after you have your appointment or your conversation, not presentation. And that's one of the things that I'm gonna stay on top of, because presentation to me is one way. It's not a engaging process, right? In other words, that assumes that everybody has the same needs, and everybody has different needs, different levels of understanding, different questions. And if I'm doing a presentation and saying, do you have any questions? Number one, I'm asking for questions at the end. And number two, they might know 85% of what I'm going over, and I might not be covering 10% of what they want to hear. So that's where the readiness comes in, right? One of your clients, Rebecca, might want to know about what's the absorption rate, how much inventory, how many months of inventory are there. Other people might just want to know what your opinion is on how to address the market. So, but I understand your point. Like when you've met their needs, right? And if it's a presentation, or maybe yours is more of a conversation, I don't know. But if you have that engagement, right? And then at the end, the natural next step is, okay, we sign here and we decide what day we're launching the property, right? It's not like you have to ask for the sale. It's like the natural step that happens just because. So when agents know their craft, when professionals know their craft at a high level, they project absolute certainty. Certainty becomes confidence. Confidence becomes attraction. Okay. Clients gravitate towards agents who know what they're doing and know what they're saying. Skill readiness is a tactical layer that supports confidence.
Right.
Skill readiness is a tactical layer that supports confidence. Sellers and buyers, it's a mastery. It's not a guesswork. It's not a, hey, what's going to happen at the end of the conversation. Objections are a fluid process if you can expect them and you know exactly how you're going to handle them. Because there's really not many objections that you haven't heard, right? Are there any new objections that have come out this past week that we haven't heard 100 times in our career? Probably not, right? It's all the same stuff.
Rob, can I share with you what I do?
Yeah.
Okay, so when I go, number one, I thank them for giving me the opportunity to meet with them. And after that, I share with them the summary of our meeting. This is what we'll do, this and this and this. And after we discuss everything, we discuss the price, we are going to fill up the paperwork. And you are absolutely right. When they have no questions, it's basically you answer what they have in their mind. I had a listing 2 days ago, and after I finish everything with them, and I said, now we're going to finish the paper, we're going to fill up the paperwork, and they sign, and that's it. But I have to prepare them step by step what I'm doing, the summary of my meeting, so they know what it will be at the end.
So setting expectations provides confidence, which provides a predictable outcome, right?
Right. Yes.
So my fourth factor here in readiness is emotional stability. Has anybody ever seen an agent that came emotionally unhinged? Now, is that likely to help them when they become emotionally unhinged? Probably not, right? So real estate is emotionally volatile. Readiness requires the ability to regulate your emotions. Okay. There's a difference between responding and reacting. And I know that you might say that's splitting hairs, but there is a difference. Do you think we're generally more emotional as an industry than our clients? And if you take yourself out of the equation, I saw Sandy, were you nodding no or yes?
No, I think that in general, the real estate agent is the one that holds the deal together a lot of times. If the buyers and sellers were talking to each other, So the whole I tell my agents, don't take on the emotional makeup of your client. That's not, if they're upset, it's not your job to be upset. That doesn't mean that you're, committed to them by having that same emotional response. You got to be prepared to help them.
So I think, Sandy, that clients are they have anxiety because there's big numbers that they've never seen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the anxiety is elevated when they don't get the confidence from the agent.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we're in two worlds with agents because I don't know, would you think that 90% of the business gets done by 10% of the agents now, Sandy? Is that probably right?
Yeah, exactly. 90-10.
So if you happen to get one of the 90 percenters that are doing like virtually no business, they're going to be high emotional. They're going to be putting accelerant on the fire, and that's why they do no business.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess the agents that can regulate their emotion, even if they're like, even if I'm like, I never saw this before, but I have to be an Academy Award winner here because the client doesn't deserve to know, what you don't know or what you need to discover for yourself. So part of our readiness is that we need to be emotionally sound when our clients, and I'm going to go one level beyond that, are cooperating agents may not be emotionally sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've seen so many of you on this call, be able to provide stability and confidence to the counterparty's client in legitimate ways. Like, because, oh my God, this is going to fall apart. I knew it was going to fall apart, right? And when you know what you're doing, you're able to find a way to bring the other client into the tent and get the job done, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of what we do. That's not, it's not in any licensing course. It's not in any process, but that's really what we do is we figure out how to regulate the emotions, how to regulate the emotion of the other agent, and how to even get through to the counterparty, the buyer or the seller in that process. Energetic presence. Your energy communicates before your words. Anybody buy that? Right? I mean, it really is like the way that the energy, you can carry positive energy or negative energy. You don't need to say a word. People feel it. Be present, focused, intentional, calm, confident, provide clarity, and understand that clients feel your energy before they hear your advice. Okay? Clients feel your energy before they listen to your advice. Proactive communication. This is a really good one. I'm going to create an immediate connection because you're all going to know this. Readiness means communicating before a potential problem arises. Okay, this is my quintessential scenario here. If you do 80% of the work, right? Let's say, Mr. Durso, I come to you and I share with you, hey, the best strategy is to put your home on the market at 450, not 525, right? We come to a consensus, we list it, and you get 5 offers the first week. What might you be inclined to do if I haven't done my job correctly?
Second guess you. Think you priced it too low.
And now when I'm trying to explain that to you after the fact, how hard is that? That's like climbing Mount Everest, right?
Almost impossible.
Correct. So they're gonna feel like they left what on the table, Rob?
Money.
They feel like they left money on the table, and I don't care if you're Tony Robbins or Dale Carnegie, you can't convince them. But you know how you can convince them, Rob? How can you do that?
By setting them up ahead of time and showing them and building confidence.
Right. So before you launch the listing, you say, hey, the only way that we know, Rob, that we got full value is if we get multiple offers early on in the process, right? and then you ask the question, they kind of repeat back, they understand what that is. Because by show of hands, who's had a client that you got a multiple offers in the first week and they thought that their house was the Taj Mahal and they rejected them all and they lived to regret it for 6 months? Anybody ever had that happen? I've certainly seen it. And that's not the client's fault. You know, you might go into the kitchen and grab a cup of coffee and complain to your colleague saying, "Oh, this guy Durso, he's a jerk. We got him 5 offers, he rejected them all, and now his property is sitting." Right? Now, this is another interesting phenomenon, but it's something I just want to put out there. But if you have 2 or 3 offers early on and you take the wrong one, then you go back to the second one, does that usually work or not? Right? Usually like, all right, well, no, I'm not, my client's not interested anymore. So it's a really delicate balance that needs to be communicated. And you can't, like, this has to be set up with proactive expectation setting, because the reactive way, I've never seen it work. Like Durso's got 5 offers, you know, his wife's telling him, "I told you we should have listed it at 525, not 450. Set expectations, anticipate questions and problems, provide updates before you're asked, and eliminate surprises. You know, we have a really successful team. I think one of his mantras is no surprises ever. Right? Because surprises in real estate generally aren't a good thing, right? You don't want surprises when you're going through the sale of your house. You know, like a surprise might be, hey, you know, we just sold your house, but you know, the house you're buying is not ready right now. That's not a good surprise. Gratitude. Does anybody feel like gratitude is part of their business?
Absolutely.
So we have Lisa and Tricia. So I'll start with Tricia and then we'll go to you, Lisa. So Tricia, how does gratitude impact your business?
I show gratefulness all the time. As a matter of fact, about 6 years ago, Rick and I did a road trip and we were seeing family and clients in Texas all the way to Missouri. And I had grateful jars made up and I use grateful because that is showing gratitude. I use it all the time. I give my clients grateful jars that they can write on and review it at the end of the year. When we have family and friends here, we invite them if they'd like to write on the grateful card and put it in the jar. We love that. But
And
once in a while,
Tricia,
once
it's
in a
funny.
while,
It's funny because it's like grateful is not anything like part of a evaluation, a presentation, or anything. But when you have gratitude, it just changes the way that you carry yourself, in my opinion. Right?
absolutely.
You're not bringing that dark cloud. Like that dark cloud can't be around you when you're grateful. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
So, and it's one of those things that I can't really explain, but when you're grateful, it probably just changes the way that you carry yourself and the clients feel that. And that has to be what a logical person believes makes it happen. But I know it works.
It
Lisa,
does. Absolutely.
Lisa, you want to put a comment or two in on that? You're on mute.
In my opinion, when you're grateful, you have a different energy frequency, and people feel that. And I always try to be grateful also to God, and I think that helps my business when you show and show gratitude and feel. You have to actually feel it, and people will feel it around you, and it comes back to you.
So, I'm going to ask you this, Lisa, and then I'm going to even ask Ivy, who's been in this business a long time. Do you think most of us are in this business long term purely for the money, or we're in this business because we have gratitude for the people we help? I'll start with you, Lisa.
Well, also because we love what we do. When you love what you do it well, and you're there to help, and then the rest is natural consequences.
Yeah, and I think gratitude is the bridge that allows you not to be frustrated when transactions fall apart because you're grateful for what happened. And Ivy, what is your thought on that? If you're somewhere where you can unmute
Well,
yourself.
I call it the real estate high. I think it's amazing. You know, runners get this high from running. I get the high from being grateful for the business we do to help others. And I think that's what keeps coming back to you. When you show that you're grateful to people and people feel that energy, you know, they want to give back to you. It's the real estate high.
So Ivy, I have a platinum level agent that is well into their 80s. And I was like, so, tell me, like, do you still enjoy it? And just to protect the person, he or she said, I still get that same high in my stomach like the first time I got my first listing.
Yeah, it's great.
And I think that's what allows you to stay relevant in the business throughout the years. And I think it's, when you do it so long, Ivy, it becomes part of your identity, not just your job. Does that make sense?
Well, it's more than your identity, it's your purpose. You know, it gives you purpose. When you are grateful, that feeling is the feeling that keeps you having purpose and you want to continue doing it. You know, I can't imagine, I've been doing this for 48 years and I can't imagine doing anything differently, you know, and there's no greater feeling for me, you know, watching an agent grow their business. That's gratefulness. And you know what? That keeps coming back to me because those people bring more people in because they know the feeling and everybody wants to be part of that.
Yep.
You know?
So gratitude is not just an emotion. It's not a belief. It's strategic. Okay. And it makes a better version of you show up, which gives you a better service to your clients. Gratitude increases resilience. It shifts energy from scarcity to abundance. It strengthens culture, and it keeps us grounded during difficult times and difficult markets.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Agents who operate from a perspective of gratitude radiate calm confidence. Right? They can't be shaken.
Mm-hmm.
Almost done. Readiness is not a moment, it's a habit. Readiness is not a moment, it's a habit. Okay, it's rituals, it's systems, it's follow up, it's reset and reflection. Does anybody either have a morning or an evening routine where you look at what your to-do list was and what you accomplished and what you're putting on for tomorrow? If you do, put your hand up. Anybody have an old-fashioned paper one that you do? Like, I hate to say I do that, but I'm pleased to announce that I have good company because I saw Jamie Dimon at the World Economic Forum, who's like, look, I just grind it out. I write everything down on a piece of paper. He took it out of his jacket. He's like, I run JP Morgan Chase. This is my to-do list. Mic drop moment.
Yep.
So consistency is what takes readiness and turns it into results. Okay. And, a deal can fall apart. Things can happen around you, but the only person who can control your emotional state and what meaning that has is who? The only person that can, the only person that can control what an event that's occurring or has occurred means is how we process it, right? And this goes both ways because there might be times when you've had a great experience, you've climbed Mount Everest, you've reached the peak, right? And then you say, is that it? like what's next, right? You probably all have gotten to that point. Maybe, you wanted to make it to platinum or you want to make a chairman's club, right? And then you're like, wow, that's it. Or if you have the gratitude, it gives you the ability to see beyond those milestones because there's more meaning to it. And it goes the other way, whereas, if something falls apart, it doesn't control your mind, right? It doesn't get into your psyche. Like a baseball player is the best analogy for me. They go on streaks, right? They have a hitting streak. They're batting 450 for 10 games, then they're batting 100. Now, my question to you is if somebody goes into that streak, is that athlete any better or worse than they were when they were doing good or bad? No. And is it the pitcher that's all of a sudden throwing great pitches for, the period that they're in the slump? Or are they just throwing fat pitches when they're on their streak? No, it's us, right? It's us. We're the ones that control that process. So I'm going to do a wrap up in a second, but is there anyone that has any gratitude stories that you want to share to inspire people? I mean, we back from R4 a week ago. We got together as a group. Anybody have any great gratitude stories?
So I will. We were at R4. I missed the closing session and was late getting to our gathering. But I was writing a contract, a giant shout out to Beth Steele for showing one day for me. And I wrote the contract, got it accepted Thursday afternoon. I reached out to the listing agent and said, we are coming in low. However, we're offering a quick close. We scheduled it for actually today closing, and we closed on Wednesday, the fastest closing I've ever had, 7 days from writing the contract to closing. And I was able to get the home inspection done on Friday morning after I returned from Vegas. So that was a huge blow it out of the water. And that goes to say you can do your business from anywhere except show a home.
Yep. And I'm going to try to be the best version of ourselves for our clients. We also need to be resourceful, and I think that's a great example of that, Tricia, being resourceful because we've all probably have had this circumstance where, and if it's only me, then I'm going to be shocked. But where a client's like, oh, you know what? Can we come out a week early to see these properties? And then you change your schedule. You might have had a weekend getaway. You change the plans, and then they call you the day before and say, "Oh no, can we keep it the first week?"
Yeah.
I mean, we've all had that, right? And to me, if you really have the readiness and the connection with the clients, you're going to be able to do what you did, Tricia, and still get the job done without having to alter your plans. And it doesn't mean that you disrespect the clients and you do that, but I'm just telling you that the universe has a way of teaching us this lesson that if we are like a Johnny on the spot, we drop everything, and then they say, oh, something came up, I can't make it then, and you've ruined your plans. And the reason why that happens, because I'm sure that's probably happened to you once or maybe multiple times, Tricia. I'm using you as an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to look back at that and say, maybe there's a better way that you could have used Trish Steele or somebody else to do that so that you don't, ruin your personal plans and you get to be more resourceful, that's part of this process, right? It's part of the process.
Absolutely.
Of gratitude. It's part of the process of being results driven. It's part of the process of being ready, right?
Well, I don't know, Rob, if you saw, I put it in the chat. So I talk about the 3 C's all the time: collaborate, communicate, and cooperate. And this was a win-win for all parties. My clients got the property at an amazing price, and they didn't have to go back to Alaska and come back. They're in their home now. They're working on it. They were supposed to go home Tuesday. They were able to reschedule everything, go home Monday. And the seller was a widow, And it was a win-win for her because she's listed that property with 3 different agents. And now it's behind her and it's done. And she has the money in her bank.
Yes, thank you for sharing. Now, does anybody know where I kind of got the subject of the highest state of readiness from? Like, did anybody ever heard that before? Like a high state of readiness, and you know what that's generally used in terms of? Come on, somebody. Going once, going twice. Does the manager of the year, Julie
It
Kirkowitz,
looks
know
like
what that is?
military.
Yes, military, right? When we're in a conflict, they're like, our military bases are on the high state of readiness, right? That means that they're prepared for something that might or likely to happen, right? And I was like, you know what? Why should we not be prepared for good things to happen all the time, right? So that's where the state of readiness, came in from. I think, I thought about this idea, but then I heard it on the news a couple of times. I'm like, that's where I thought about it from. And I'm like, that could be relevant to our business, right? We need to be ready at all times, right? And not only present. Present doesn't mean ready, right? Ready is a combination of being physically present, being emotionally present, being mentally prepared, right? Having all of those things put together, that's what, the highest state of readiness means in this business. So, anyway, that's where I got my crazy idea from this week, and I think it's incredibly relevant. And I think that if we have gratitude, we're always ready. Even if we lose, we were prepared. Like it doesn't phase you, right? Um, Mr. Greenacre, how are you, sir? You're still on mute there.
There we go. I'm doing good.
When you're ready and you bring the best version of yourself, and something doesn't come together, or something falls apart, how do you handle it? Do you get upset, or do you just count it as one that's going to happen, and you just brush it off?
Well, being in the business for a long time, if you don't brush it off, you waste a lot of time worrying about that one that got away. So for me, it's, next, and I'll think about it when I leave an appointment. If I don't get the listing, I'll leave the appointment going, okay, what did I do that I should have done differently? But I don't let it wreck, because I got to get on the phone and prospect. I've got to keep going.
So a big shout out to Pat Stracuzzi for this one. Is when you leave that listing, and if you haven't gotten it, you either win or you learn. How's that?
Yep.
How's that for reframing it from being frustrated to say, hey, I just had a learning experience here, and I just had to figure out what it is, instead of having an anger or an emotional experience. Because if you go the other way, you probably won't be able to stay sustainably happy in this business and successfully, correct?
Correct.
So Sandy's a learning experience is a win. Yeah. A win is a win. A learning experience is a win. What's not a win is anger, right? Because, and I'm going to ask you this, Gary. When you see agents that lose a listing, who do they normally blame?
Seller.
Yes. But whose fault is it?
Theirs, yeah.
That was worth coming up here today, because we feel like it wasn't our fault. We feel like we're a victim and we blame the seller, but in reality, it's truly our fault, right? It's our problem, right? Forget about it being our problem. It's our learning experience if we didn't win, right? And oh, they have a son that's in the business. Well, then why did they have you at their house, right? That's not the real reason. The real reason is that you weren't prepared. You didn't bring the best version of yourself. You didn't have a compelling conversation. You weren't irresistible to the client. So therefore, they either deferred or they declined, right? So there's the last win of today is if you you lose a transaction, you don't blame the client, don't blame the other agent, make it into a learning experience, and you say, hey, there's something good coming out of this so that it's not going to happen again, right? To be on like a morbid process, like when there's a plane crash, the NTSB does a tremendous investigation because they want to find out what happened, not because they're curious, but they want to make sure it doesn't happen again, correct? So if we look at it as a lost opportunity, we're going to dissect it and make sure it doesn't happen again. We don't have that same failed experience. We'll all be better for that. All right. So I don't know if anybody heard, but I'm going to embarrass Julie Kirkowitz, Manager of the Year for the St. Louis region. Wave to everybody, Julie. Yes. So everybody have a great weekend, a great productive weekend, and I'll see you all next week. Bye, everybody.